All right, everyone. Um, hey, thank you for being here and participating in this. Looking, Arena and Kelly are muted. Taryn is not, and it's fine. Um, Hi, Taryn, you're home. And so the idea has been since starting this company to eventually get around to this point of providing educational, informational content for people that's not just about why our products are great, but why you need supplements and really developing a mindset for living a healthier life. Um, you know, our lives change when we come across information that we can apply to our lives. And this is in that direction, helping us get informed and educated in a specific area of healthcare. So in this case, we'll be talking about nutrition and specifically why supplements are not just helpful, but necessary. So we'll go into that. So supplements are necessary to provide your cells with the nutrients they need. And when we don't have enough nutrients, we wind up developing diseases. And disease and nutrition, all of this is very complicated. And a term that I commonly use is multifactorial. Everything is multifactorial in nature. There's more than one thing driving, say, pathology, the development of cancer or having a heart attack or diabetes. You could take all the supplements in the world, but a poor diet would still lead you to diabetes. So it's not just that you take supplements and it changes everything in your life. Again, it's multifactorial. So this is a component, but it's a very, very important component. So we'll drive into that. So in 1880, the average lifespan, how long the amount of time from birth to death worldwide was about 40 years. And then that doubled by the 1990s. So in roughly 100 years, we began living twice as long. And as a result, we have to provide our bodies with the nutrients they need to support a longer lifespan. Because if nutrient driven pathologies begin to show up, say, in our 50s, but we're going to live into our 80s, then we're going to spend the last years of our life in declining quality, going from one doctor to another, having one illness, and so on and so forth. So the longer lifespan is a key reason why nutrition is just so darned important because we don't want to spend those last decades of our lives going from one disease to another. It's like we put out one fire and another one starts. So scientists that study lifespan and the development of disease or why some populations remain healthier, it's called epidemiology. And epidemiologists will look at various measures of health. One of them is just lifespan, how long you live. Another that's really interesting is called healthy aging. Healthy aging is a description of how long you'll live before pathology develops. And they have this, well, down to a science. And say in the United States, they know that age 66, females on average begin to develop what's called an end stage illness, something that's going like cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, things that wind up being the cause of death. And these show up at, again, age 66 for females. It's earlier for men. So healthy aging is how long we live before that happens. Because at that point, another important measure of life, quality of life, begins to diminish because now you're dealing with diseases. So providing your body with the nutrients that it needs, wow, so important because you can extend healthy aging. And so governments are all about this stuff when it's not in mainstream media because it's just going to save so much in terms of healthcare dollars. So they healthy aging is very, very important. Again, there's no reason we have to suddenly develop diseases just because, we're in our mid 60s or 70s or at any age. Um, Again, it's multifactorial. It's not just nutrition, it's stress. Where are you at spiritually in your life? Do you have a deep connection spiritually? Are you carrying around a lot of resentment? That will wear us out. Is my lifestyle really stressful? Am I sedentary? Do I not get enough exercise? So all of these factor in. But recapping what we've covered so far, we live a lot longer, so we've got to provide our bodies with the nutrients that they require. So that's a biggie. Another, and I'm commonly asked this is, hey, if I eat a well-balanced diet, can I just get all the nutrients I need from the food that I consume? And this is a really important topic here because there really is no consensus on it. I can tell you without any hesitation, no, you're not going to get the nutrients that you need from food. You just won't. The only way that you could really do that is if every day you eat a lot of organ meat. It would be liver, brain, heart, kidney, and people just don't do that. Hold on one moment. Krista, could you hide your camera? The movement is distracting. Thank you. Yeah. And so we're just unlikely to get the nutrients we need, even with a really good diet. I've written a 1,000-page book on healthcare, and I covered these points in there from having studied, the science and knowing what are the shortfall nutrients, the things that you're just not going to get. And then there are another important tie-in here is it might say on the label, a great example is kale. You're looking at the nutrition label on a package of kale, and it says that it has all of these nutrients. But the reality is only a fraction of those nutrients is going to end up in your cells because the nutrients in many foods, including kale, are not in bioavailable form. So just because it says it on the label or even on a supplement label doesn't mean that it's in your body. A great example of that is vitamin B1, which is thiamine. And you could go to the health food store, spend a lot of money, take a large dose. A large dose of thiamine would be 500 milligrams. And you could take this 500 milligram dose of thiamine, and I promise you, if you did, you'd still be deficient in thiamine because thiamine is so poorly absorbed. And thiamine is that's the form of vitamin B1 that's in food, but we just have a really difficult time absorbing it, particularly in where we digest our food in the stomach and small intestine. That's when digestion is to break it down into tiny little molecules that can be absorbed. But thiamine, it's just difficult to get it out of the digestive tract and into the bloodstream. So we'll have this idea of whatever it is that's in food, nature created it that way, and it will be in the right form for us, but it's just not the case. And again, I'm using thiamine as an example. Those who know me well, I've said this before that in the 1950s and 60s, Japanese scientists began creating a form of thiamine that had another molecule added to it, something natural called phosphorus. A phosphate group is what it's termed in chemistry. But by adding a phosphate group to thiamine, it's 5 to 6 times more absorbable out of the stomach and small intestine. So we don't really want the thiamine in food because that form isn't very bioavailable. We're going to benefit our health by using a form of this and various other ingredients that have been manipulated in a laboratory. In our minds, we go, "Oh, I don't want that," and it's like in some cases you really do, because no matter how much you get of the natural form, it's still not in your cells. You'll still have a shortfall of that nutrient. So this is all that went into creating the products that we have developed is this type of information. Really studied it from top to bottom for 10 years to figure these things out. So no, we can't necessarily get it from the diet because what's in the food isn't always the form that's best for us, especially when we're trying to live a nice long life. And I'll tell you, just I'm using vitamin B1 as an example. Having a shortfall of vitamin B1 is associated with so many issues. Something that's new in humanity in the last, especially 40 years, which in the overall scheme of things is just not even a blink of an eye. It's so quick. But suddenly there are a lot of neurodegenerative conditions. And you can look at those and you can see what nutrients are we lacking that precipitate these neurodegen diseases. And one of them is vitamin B1, thiamine. There the scientific literature is teeming with articles that associate vitamin B1 deficiency with neurodegeneration. The same goes for vitamin B12, and especially in a form called methylcobalamin. And then there are others, the two omega-3 oils, DHA and EPA. And then when all of these are looked at in as a whole, you can look at autopsy brains and find out, wow, they're really deficient in these nutrients, and they develop these pathologies and begin to develop a working understanding of how nutrient shortfalls lead to neurodegenerative conditions. So again, the products we develop take all of that into consideration and include certain formulations of certain things, and in some cases, large amounts, because if we've been in a nutrient shortfall situation for decades, we're we're turning on genetic switches and opening up doorways so that would predispose us to these diseases. But if we can close those doorways and reverse those genetics flips and switches. At this point, we really do diminish the disease risk by just providing basic nutrients. So we live a long time. We can't get the nutrients that we need from foods. So the idea was let's create products that provide those nutrients to people in the amounts that are beneficial and in the form of that nutrient that's beneficial. Staying with vitamin B1, again, what's in food is called thiamine, not really bioavailable out of the digestive tract, but by using a form called benfotiamine, it's far more available out of the digestive tract. And as a result, you'll get far more of it into your cells. So just one example of how that works and why no, not we can't really get it out of food. By the way, we I will open up to questions at the end. So if you have questions, just keep a mental note of them, and we'll answer as many as possible as we go. I often find that questions get answered as we go, but sometimes they don't. So again, we'll address those later. Um, Okay, so I was mentioning lifespan, how long we live from birth to death, and healthy aging, how long we live before we develop pathology. But then there are other indices or measures of health, such as, well, how about if I can just continue to live and perform the same functions that I could when I was 30, but when I'm in my 80s, even my 90s and beyond. And to a lot of us, that seems like a stretch because we're so used to looking around and seeing people who can't do that. And again, health is multifactorial. It's not just take supplements and it will solve all your problems. It can't. That's just not reality. But it's a piece of the puzzle. So if a person says, "Hey, I'm really interested in not developing diseases," I watched loved ones develop cardiovascular disease and die of a stroke or a heart attack or have cancer that lasted for a number of years, and then their whole life went into managing that condition, that disease for a year, 5 years, sometimes 20 years, and it's their world became very small. So if a person is bent on, I'd rather not go down that road. That's entirely possible, and supplements are a part of that. having what they call age-related quality of life. It may diminish. You may not be running, people say, I can't do what I used to do, but you could still be active. You could still be performing, valuable functions to yourself, to society, and nutrition is a key component of that. So again, going back to the beginning and recapping, supplements can help us diminish the risk of disease, increase how long we live in a healthy body. They provide us with the nutrients that we need that we can't really get from food. Humans live a lot longer than they did, so all of this really ties together. It's just part of a healthy lifestyle. Insofar as education, I get that. Well, I've already given a lot of information, but that's the point of this, and it's recorded so it can be watched a few times as needed. But helping again, I wrote a large book, and I geared that book to helping us become educated so we can make healthy decisions. And one thing that's really, really key to know is that just on a purely physical level, not psychologically, spiritually, but on a physical level, life in many ways can be reduced to biological life, can be reduced to making energy. And I'll go into that and how nutrients tie into that. So humans, mammals, we have to make what's known as ATP. ATP is energy. Interestingly, every cell in your body has to make it. The liver doesn't make it as a central clearinghouse fashion and then just send it out to all the cells through the blood. It's not like that. Every cell has to make energy. It has to make ATP. Without enough ATP, your cell dies. And if that cell dies, it becomes a drag on your entire system. To make ATP, you require so many nutrients. And every cell is making ATP in every split second of the day. There's no way around it. And cells have a limited reservoir of nutrients. So they're constantly absorbing the nutrients they require to make ATP from the blood. So we need to be providing our bodies with the nutrients they need all the time, 24/7. And at night, of course, we're not eating. But our metabolic rate reduces, and so our cells aren't making as much ATP. But when we're up and active and engaged and our minds are active, the brain burns about 25% of our daily calories. So just at the baseline state, even if we're sitting in a chair, our brain is still consuming quite a few calories. So our brain needs to make a lot of ATP. And so if a person is saying, God, I'm just constantly fatigued, I can't seem to get it together, there are various reasons. And one of them is shortfall of nutrients in the brain. And that can be macronutrients, that's fat and protein. And another can be the micronutrients, and that's your vitamin A, your B vitamin C, D, E, iodine, and so forth. So we've got to constantly supply our cells, all the cells of the body, with the nutrients they need so they can make ATP. So that's why I'm saying biological life, it really is reducible to energy. You got to make energy. So the supplements that Super Empowered Supplements has created considered this. All right, what nutrients are needed to make ATP and then provide them to users in the amounts that lead to optimal ATP production, because sometimes you need a lot of something, but in other cases, if you throw a lot of something into your body, it can cause an undesired or an unforeseen problem. And just as an example of that, if you take a multivitamin, and our company creates multivitamins, so I really researched this. It's important to know which transporters attach to these molecules and bring them to the cells. So there are what are called binding affinities, which is how strongly a nutrient will bind with the transporter. And if there's a shared transporter, it's transporting three, four, five different nutrients, and you throw in a large amount of one, but there's a high binding affinity for that one, then it can block the other ones from binding and being transported to the cells. So it's really important to create a balanced product that considers all of this. And so with each ingredient, I figured out, all right, how do you transport it? How do you get it out of the gut? What attaches to it in the blood? How does it get to the cell? How does it leave the blood transporter and get into the cell? So that I didn't, read a study that said, boy, we sure could use more of this, and then throw a bunch of it in and then unwittingly block the transport of other nutrients. So all of this has to be considered, but we've got to get the nutrients to the cells to create ATP. I'll tie in trying, I'm trying to ladder this up so you get an idea of how this works. This is, again, I want to help people get educated so they can understand, well, why would I eat a certain food? Why would I take nutritional supplements? Something that's very common in today's world is intermittent fasting. And people ask me about it all the time. And if a person is needing to, say, lose weight, intermittent fasting can be a helpful tool. But intermittent fasting, if it's, let's say, and people will proudly tell me, IF, intermittent fast, for 18 hours a day. But if they're not taking supplements during that time, by the time they get to 14 hours, 12 hours, 8 hours, their cells may be lacking in the micronutrients they need to make ATP. So we solve one problem and then create another. We're coming from a place of my health is damaged, I've neglected it, I'm overweight, I haven't been taking care of myself. Oh boy, now I'm aware that I've got health problems. I've been diagnosed with the disease. I'm overweight. My doctor said lose weight, suggested intermittent fasting. But now that I've been doing it for 3 years, I'm putting my cells into a condition where they're experiencing shortfall nutrients every day just because I'm not providing my body with the nutrients that it needs. And so you can see how, hey, every cell needs all of these nutrients every moment to make ATP. And so you've got to provide your body with the nutrients. So it's a crazy world. It's fast paced. It's difficult. We live a long time. We don't have time to attend to all of the functions. Let's say, boy, I really would love to meditate 3 hours a day. Well, most people don't have time to do that. And I would love to, but rarely does that happen. So I make time for it every day. I make time for the nutrition my body needs. But really, I've shortcutted the process by creating a product or products that provide us with those nutrients so that we can go about our busy lives, but still provide the body with the nutrients it needs to, again, perform the basic function of making ATP. And I keep coming back to ATP, ATP, ATP. I've given numerous talks in public, and I'm always harping on the importance of ATP. And so I'm going to just continue on this for a little bit because when this one clicks in your mind and you start to go, wait a minute, I've got to provide my body with the nutrients because vitamin A, which we often associate with vision, every cell in your body needs vitamin A in order to make enough ATP. And this is an emerging thing in the scientific literature on vitamin A. Vitamin A is almost non-existent in the food supply. In plants, there is no vitamin A. There's what's known as beta carotene, but that's not vitamin A. Beta carotene is a prohormone, it's a precursor of vitamin A, but humans poorly take beta carotene from carrots and convert it into the form of vitamin A that the cells need. And so if a person is following more of a vegetarian, especially a vegan diet, they can become A deficient. And boy, now they're having a hard time making enough ATP in every cell of the body without having any idea why that's so. ATP, ATP, ATP. It all comes down to ATP. And one thing I'm not going to get into diet here, but I will say I'll use A as an example. The only real source of vitamin A in the human diet that's reliable is liver, especially fish liver. Beef liver has A, but not to the extent as fish liver. And most of us don't eat fish liver every day. And so we're far more likely to be deficient in vitamin A. And a person can say, because they get on, they follow a health hack, a health guru online, and they're telling you need all these B vitamins, B vitamins, B vitamins. You got to have B vitamins. But the person hasn't taken 10 years to read 20,000 scientific studies and figure all this out. And so the person is just lacking vitamin A. But it's like if you want to build a house without enough concrete for the foundation, eventually the roof will collapse. It may take 40 years, but it will collapse. And it was collapsing all the while. But in a house, which is more of a static thing, it just may not show up. But in your life, it may show up as an energy drag or drain throughout decades. And you're just thinking, I don't know what it is. I keep doing all these right things. I'm going to the functional doctors, and they've got me on high doses of B, and I'm taking enough, more C. It's just like I may as well be, get on an intravenous drip. I'm taking so much vitamin C, but we're still deficient in vitamin A because it's not in the diet. I'm not making the ATP I need. I'm energy deficient. I can't figure out why. And nobody stops and says, well, it's because of vitamin A. Just an example of everything that nature has designed us to do is required. It's dependent on an ATP production. And to make ATP, we have to have all of these nutrients. And I could go through each one, and you're already going, oh my God, this guy just keeps going and going and going. And so I don't want to put you to sleep. You may want to get coffee or a toothpick for each eye to, prop them open. But these are designed to be informative and educational. And I will get around to doing one on vitamin A and then on B1 and on B2 because it's important. I mean, not everyone is wired informationally, but we need a certain amount of information to run our lives because until we do, we're running on assumption. And when we're running on assumption, it's going to catch up with us. The wisest person in ancient Greece was Socrates, and he said, he who opines knows nothing. In other words, he who bases life on opinions doesn't really know anything and isn't going anywhere, just spinning wheels. So this is designed to, hey, let's provide a solid informational base. So supplements, ATP, health, longevity, optimal function, decreasing diseases. It's all based on getting the nutrients that your cells need. And ATP is a key player in that. And since I've been doing all the talking, I will say, this might be a good time. If you have a question at this point, it will cause me to stop talking. So if you have a question, please unmute yourself and go ahead and fire away. Okay. So it's either no one knowing how to unmute themselves or not having a question. So, um, but feel free to jump in if you do. Okay. So I've covered quite a lot of ground already. Um, let me look at I have a brief note outline here, and I'm looking through it, and I really have gone through all of the stuff there that was on my list. So
Excuse me.
yes, Arena,
I would like a question.
sure.
Has nothing to do with coffee, believe it or not. Anyway,
Cool.
can you touch base on the value of uh, taking supplements pulsed throughout the day rather than believing that you only need it once a day and it's going to do the trick?
Okay. Thank you. Lovely question. So w- when I've been making my own supplements for about 10 years. I started ordering powders off of Amazon because they're all out there. And I would mix them all together. And then what I would do is put them into a large water bottle. And that way, each time I take a drink of water, I'm getting a little bit of nutrient. And so what Arena is asking is about pulse dosage. And so I was getting, an ultimately pulsed dose because every time I took a drink of water, I got a little bit of magnesium and vitamin C and iodine and, on and on. But when when I finished writing the book, I spent 8 years writing Healthy Past 100 is the name of the book. I had it in mind that I would start a supplement company and help people that way by providing them supplements. What I wasn't, I had no idea what happened when I ordered, if you will, real ingredients from right straight from the manufacturer who had just made it and they could tell me the date of manufacture. It hadn't been sitting in a warehouse for a couple of years, oxidizing and becoming far less potent. I just was shocked at how strong it was. And these supplement ingredients often are bitter. Not all of them, but a lot of them are very, very bitter to the taste because they're pure extracts. And so it wound up having to go into capsules. But there was to provide people with the nutrients they need, it was far more capsules than I was anticipating. And so a typical dose of our product is 10 capsules a day, which lends itself perfectly to what Arena is talking about, a pulsed dose. You don't want to take 10 capsules of super fresh, super potent, super bioavailable nutrients all at once because it would be like eating 3 pounds of beef liver and a quarter pound of fish liver and some brain all at once. In other words, there's no way to absorb all of those nutrients at once. So this product or the products we develop have many capsules because that's what it takes to provide your body with what it needs. But it lends itself perfectly to taking, say, 4 capsules in the morning, three in the early afternoon, three in the late afternoon, and then you provide your body with the nutrients that it needs throughout the day. And so this bootstraps into that intermittent fasting conversation. Instead of going 18 hours or 12 hours or whatever it is without any nutrients and getting into a shortfall situation, you're providing your body with the nutrients throughout the day. And this is a key issue. All of the nutrients that we put in our body, vitamin A, the B vitamins, C, D, E, they have a very limited amount of time that they exist in the blood supply. The liver and the kidneys are really particular about keeping your blood at a certain flow rate or what's called viscosity, thickness, thinness. And if you throw in a bunch of nutrients, it can slightly thicken the blood. And
Mhm.
so even though we need these things, the body will get the liver and kidneys are going to get rid of these nutrients before the cells have a chance to absorb them. So the pulsed dose, the multiple doses throughout the day is so important to getting the nutrients we need into our cells. And a way of thinking about this is, all right, we we have the opportunity to live a long, healthy life. And so we're all science experiments, if you will, and saying, well, what would happen if I did exercise? What would happen if I did meditate? What would happen if I made a list of the 10 people who have driven me crazy in my life, who I convinced myself are the cause of my problems, and I forgave them? What would happen if I took all the nutrients that my body needed and I did it in a pulse dose? We could materially affect our health, our longevity, and all of this. So the question about pulse dose is really important, and our product is designed with that in mind. So thanks for the lovely question. So
I have a question.
sure, Kelly.
Um, okay, so I really do like organs. Now,
Hmm.
I mean, because I know I've always taken a ton of supplements to try to fix whatever I thought I had. I know that's really messed me up. And so I've really narrowed things down, but I also like beef organs. So is that going to be too much
Mhm.
for me to take in, because I know I've overburdened myself too with, trying to, fix health issues.
Mhm. So it's a lovely question. And by and large, the challenge that we have is not getting enough nutrients, right? I mean
Right.
that's by and large our one of our many contributing factors to health issues. But for some, getting too much of a nutrient can be a problem.
Mhm.
There is a distinction between eating some capsules of freeze-dried organs versus eating the real McCoy in
Mhm.
its raw state. That can be that can be an issue. So if you get too much of it, so
Right.
it's really would be more of a case by case situation. And if a person is saying, well, I'm eating, say, 3 or 4 ounces of raw liver and an ounce of brain, and da da da. So if you're eating that much or more on a daily basis, then that can lead to an abundance of nutrients. But there are only some nutrients where an excess is associated with a health issue. Vitamin B6 comes to mind. And off
Oh,
the top of my head, I don't know how much B6 is in beef liver. I would have to look and
yeah.
see. Um, but like I'll give you like vitamin A. There's a lot of controversy. What I learned in school 30 years ago was you get too much vitamin A, it's a problem. But by and large, that's not entirely true. But if you get a ton of vitamin A, it could be a problem. Vitamin B, the B vitamins, again, B6 is one of those, but B1, no, 2, no, 3, no, 4, no. Generally, there's no way you could supplement with enough, say, what was once known as vitamin B4 called choline. You just won't overdo it. So in vitamin C, you can't overdo it because it's so poorly absorbed out of the digestive tract. So by and large, it's not a big issue with getting too much from organ meats because most people aren't sitting down and just, eating, a third of a pound of liver or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd always like to do less is more, because I think it's just been too much for me,
Mhm.
everything I've been trying. So that's why I like, what you've done with your supplement.
Yeah, Kelly, I am recently back in touch with. She was a patient years ago in Prescott, so we've known each other for 20 odd years, and so it's helpful when you've known somebody for a very long time, and to be able to um, not just answer a question as if, without actually knowing the person and not there and therefore not giving a very nuanced answer. And so it's common it's different in males and females, but females hormonally just are more predisposed to, say, chronic fatigue. And it doesn't mean that men aren't, but certain nutrients can predispose a person to suddenly going, wow, I feel like no matter what I do, I can't seem to get to the bottom of my health issues. And you chase a lot of things and you take a lot of supplements, and that often won't do it. And so I'm just because of my knowing you that I can talk about an ingredient that I put into our products, which is a form of iodine.
Mm.
Many times we'll overdo it with B vitamins, we'll way overdo it with C and D, but we'll underdo it with A and E, and we'll not even it won't even be on our radar to take iodine. And iodine is highly controversial, but I've written in my book what is probably the most thoroughgoing analysis of thyroid physiology and how iodine taps into that that exists anywhere on the planet because I really wanted to know. And I wanted to have that basis of knowledge available for people who are so inclined. But it is, chronic fatigue and CFIDs, it's inseparable from hypothyroidism. And one cannot get out of that while they're in a shortfall of bioavailable iodine because you can't make enough thyroid hormone. The engine of the thyroid is iodine. iodine makes the thyroid gland itself makes thyroid hormone based on the iodine molecule. And we often just don't have a lot of it. It's just not in the diet. Um, we can be taking an iodine supplement, which usually is limited to 150 micrograms, which is so paltry that, given difficulties with uptake and absorption, can block that. So I put in significantly more iodine with that, knowing that by and large, the end user of the products I develop will be female, probably will be 50 years or older, because that's who takes supplements. It, you know, 19-year-old boys don't take supplements. I mean, by and large, it's not just, that's not a generalization. It's just the way it goes. I did, but I'm somewhat of an anomaly there. In 22-year-old college girls often don't take supplements. If they do, it's hit or miss. But when we get older, the demographics show in the United States, and I just have studied those, it's college-educated white females who take supplements who seek out complementary and alternative therapies, because that's who's interested in that by and large. And so, knowing that, I said, I need to put some iodine in this, because by and large, Americans are deficient in that. And it leads to all these health issues that won't be solved no matter how many organ meats you eat, no matter how many B vitamins and other supplements. So I did my best to just create a product that, reading the label, a person won't necessarily know. But so in your case, just because you're getting all of the, say, organ meats, and you've taken a lot of supplements, we can still be lacking one or two key ingredients. In this case, I'm talking about iodine in the thyroid, and really just not get where we need to be. A lack of iodine predisposes us to all kinds of cancers, especially glandular
Right.
cancer, breast, ovarian, uterine, for men, the prostate. So just I'm going off on that, but another example of how certain nutrients really, they lead to some problems. So thank you for the question. I know I
Yeah.
went off on a tangent on that. Do you have another, or a continue follow up on that, or?
No, but I remember, like, I'm not sure if I told you this before, but I know my mom is, when she was young, she had a goiter. So isn't that iodine? Uh, she hasn't had enough iodine.
Where did your
So it's
mother
kind
grow
of
up?
in the family.
Mhm.
Is that, pardon?
Where did your mother grow up?
In Montana.
Interesting. Okay. Um,
Yeah, it wasn't a goiter belt or anything. But she had a goiter. And then from then on, and thyroid problems. So her, my sister and me have all had thyroid issues. So I didn't, wasn't quite sure all the connection there.
mm, it's goiter isn't as common today. It once was very, very common. And the thyroid gland is just enlarging
Yeah.
itself to be able to, just having, by hook or crook, having more tissue. It could absorb more iodine from the diet. But in your case,
Uh-huh.
there, you could have had, 1,000 people, and not everybody in town had a goiter. So it's that this person's physiology is predisposed to being, it's just
Yeah.
not as capable of absorbing iodine from the food. There are other factors as well. Certain things can
Yeah.
block the absorption of iodine. They're called halides. They're bromine,
Right. Oh,
brominated
yeah.
flours, and in these things. So, it's always multifactorial. But in your case,
Yeah.
there are signs that, probably you would need significantly more iodine than the next person. But then there's all this research out there on Hashimoto's showing that iodine and Hashis don't go
Yeah.
together. And I'm telling you, I did not find that. I found exactly the opposite. And I also find age-old
Wow.
practices. For instance, yeah, I told you, I said I wrote a thoroughgoing analysis, really more of a treatise on thyroid physiology and iodine. And in the Mayo Clinic back in the 1800s and 1900s, they treated all manner of diseases successfully. And one of them was all manner of thyroid issues. And they would give people enormous amounts of iodine. And this was before the concept of
Oh,
Hashis was developed, but they were so successful in their treatment. And they didn't know a lot of things then. They didn't know about selenium and other cofactors, vitamins A and C and D and E. But just with iodine, they could solve so many health issues. So um, if you're dealing with a lot of health issues, there's things that always go through my mind when somebody has health issues. Iodine deficiency, H. pylori infection, those are always on my mind. Hydrochloric acid insufficiency, nutrient shortfalls, because you can almost take it to the bank that those things are going on. And and also stress
right.
or, a person suddenly is so fatigued that they don't have time to really cultivate a spiritual practice or to maintain the one that they had already developed. So it's always multifactorial. But yeah, and iodine,
Of course.
this is, pointing out to there are certain things to have webinars on soon, and iodine would certainly be one of them. So um, I
Yeah.
see that
Well,
there's a,
thank you so much.
you're welcome. There's a hand icon by Krista, and boy, this is sophisticated. The person gets to raise their hand with an emoji.
Yeah, I can lower it too. So I have a question. Is it time for that?
Of course.
Would you speak, please, to um, targeting specific targeting symptoms with specific individual nutrients for that symptom versus combinations of things?
Okay, that's a dangerous one because I'm not giving medical advice, and what would work for one person in one circumstance would not necessarily work for another. This has to be case by case. What comes to mind when you ask this question is vitamin B12, and which could be used for a whole host of already existing pathologies. But it's a nuanced conversation that would be above and beyond what I would want to get into now. So I will say, yes, nutrients can affect existing pathology. When a malnourished child develops measles, that becomes end stage illness. In other words, the measles can wipe out a malnourished child. And high dose vitamin A can rescue that and has been used for decades to do just that, to rescue it. So, a vitamin A injection is a nutrient, one nutrient used in a specific application of pathology that is very effective. But you can see why that's case by case, because that does not mean that we all need to go get a high dose vitamin A injection and that it would solve our problems, would be prudent. A lot of people go and get IV um, nutrients, but that can lead to what's called a functional deficiency. You start getting into the interplay of nutrients, and you get enough vitamin B9, and you can block and you can overcome temporarily a B12 deficiency, but the B12 is still deficient. And the person says, "I feel great. I took this nutrient. Things are clearing up. That's what I need to do." But they're still deficient in another area. So it's nuanced, it's very complex, and that's why I can't really tie into that question at the moment.
Okay, so what about multivitamins, multiminerals? Just you're not targeting one thing with one nutrient. You're getting the whole complex.
Mhm. Okay. So again, when it comes into taking a substance, and I'll say that one of the products that Super Empowered Supplements has created called the Vision Guard, which is a very thoroughgoing multivitamin. And so what I would suggest is looking at it as a tool to provide your cells with the nutrients they need. It's a different conversation to go from there into treating pathology. That's one that, as a supplement company, if I want the FDA to come and knock on my door, I would make claims that this product will solve these issues. So absolutely unequivocally, no one wants to touch that because it's dangerous. Because again, it could be used as a crutch. It could hide a functional deficiency in another area. It could um, it could hide a genetic predisposition to someone that I spoke with recently mentioning detox pathways that were genetically aberrant. And so, absolutely, that has to be a case by case by case by case circumstance, which is why the FDA, who, by the way, they're great. They're so good to deal with. We have a lot of ideas on our minds about, oh, the FDA, they're horrible. And they're hands off. They're like, we're not getting involved. Don't make weird claims. If you do, we'll shut you down. So no, 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 no. I can't make claims as such. I can't get into that. Can't even really touch on it. It's not. It wouldn't. It's not prudent. So, but,
My question is a little bit different from that.
mhm,
Let me put it in terms of, well, when you talked about iodine, you mentioned cofactors, like you need other things with the iodine.
mhm.
That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about.
Okay. And again, one person may not have a problem with hypothyroidism, but another might. And that person, as a result, might require far more iodine and other cofactors, selenium, vitamin A, C, D, E. But again, that has to be considered case by case. There's just no way to make a product that starts solving people's healthcare issues or making claims that it could, because again, that would be to me, it would be a violation spiritually and also ethically as a healthcare provider. So I'm having to be very careful with your questions because they're leading towards an answer. It's just like in a way, it's like asking, well, tell me exactly what God is. And the Hindus describe that differently than the Christians. And the Buddhists don't top. I can't get into that. So I understand where you're going, but I just I can't address the questions.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So, um, so we've covered various things. I'll do my best to recap it and then see if there's other questions. And it's basically, hey, if I would want to experience optimal health for the long run, there are certain things I'd want to do. And one of them would be I'd want to provide my body with the nutrients that it needs. And this makes sense. And we need those nutrients to make ATP. And we need a lot of nutrients and we need them throughout the day. We'd also, of course, health is multifactorial. It's not, if I'm getting all the nutrients I need and I'm not eating a healthy diet and I'm drinking a lot of alcohol and I'm smoking cigarettes and I'm exposed to toxins and I'm stressed to the gills and my headspace isn't good and I'm carrying around a lot of grief, then the nutrients are really limited in effectiveness. So it's multifactorial. So but nutrients are just a piece of the puzzle. And they can tie in to many things and help us have a stave off disease because diseases are associated with nutrient deficiencies. So providing your body with the nutrients that it benefits from, well, this is wise, of course. So, but the products that our company produces are a bit unique. They've been highly researched. Each ingredient, the amount, the type of ingredient. I went into some stuff on B1. Something I often mention because I'm pulling from things that people ask me, and I'm often asked about vitamin C. It's a hot ticket item still. Vitamin C, whether you get a synthetic made in a laboratory, you get the most expensive one that's pulled from foods and mixed with rose hips and all of this, you're going to have the same amount of vitamin C in your cells by hook or by crook. It won't really make a difference. So sometimes it matters and sometimes it's less important. So you can save your money on C, but invest it in others. So our company's philosophy is provide a safe product that meets the needs of the majority of people, kind of going into what Krista was talking about. There are certain times when a more nuanced nutrient profile would be needed, but that has to be done on a case by case basis. It's just that's the artistry of healthcare, or of making supplements. But right now we're just talking about having a basic product or not a basic product, a very nuanced product that will meet the needs of the majority. So supplements meet they're important. We don't get the nutrients we need from food. They're just not in there. And it says it's on the label, or I'm taking these supplements and it says there's a bunch of it in there, but it's just not in a form that works. People constantly send me text images of a supplement bottle that they came across, or they tell me about this internet celebrity who's really popular and has a very expensive product line, and advocates only using their products because they do third-party testing and other products are dangerous and that they only use the best ingredients. And I'm continually looking at these products and going, that product does not have clean ingredients. It has synthetic forms of B12. It has uh, forms of others that are not bioavailable. These are mass produced and not of high quality and wouldn't really be of great benefit. It's common for me to look at really expensive supplements that are based, their vitamin A is based on beta carotene rather than retinol palmitate, and so the idea is give people a really good product that is nuanced and provides them with what they need. So, wanting to keep this at an hour, and I'm 3 minutes away from that. So I'll take if someone wants to unmute and ask one more question, great. You all have been wonderful, and I'm enjoying this and really looking forward to doing more of these. So, so if no other questions, we'll get this webinar posted onto the website, and I'll let you know when more of these are happening. And the idea is to get a library of them, and then people can go and just look through the library and say, I need information on vitamin D. I need information on da da da, and then yeah, we'll go from there. But I really appreciate you uh, participating in this and coming along. Thank you for your support, and I thank you. I appreciate you all. I love you all very much. And namaste.
Thank you for doing.
You're welcome. It's a joy. It's a what an honor to have a life where you can do a lot of homework and then share it with people in a way that could be helpful. So wonderful. All right, all. More to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.